What the Falcons do, rise up. Welcome to Rise Up Reactions, the show where we talk all things Falcons, NFL, Georgia sports, and in general the sports news of the day. I'm your host, Dr. Lee Denning, lifelong sports fan. And today is 3/21/23. I have a couple of things to talk about. I will probably do one of these videos that posts tomorrow, and that'll be to talk about Mac Hollins. Our newest wide receiver acquisition for $2.5 million. He's going to be 30 going into the next season. I do believe he's going to be a pretty solid wide receiver, too, after having a breakout year in Las Vegas. I will talk about him tomorrow. I'm quite excited for that. We also signed another defensive back in Mike Hughes, which I will also talk about tomorrow. Today, though, what I wanted to talk about, because it's a little bit more pertinent for the timeline coming up, is what are we going to do with A.J. Terrell? Now, A.J. was drafted 16th overall in 2020, which means that he is leaving his third year, entering his fourth year into the NFL. And what that means as a first-round pick is that we have the option to keep him for a fifth year. Now, that option looks a little bit different depending on playing time, Pro Bowl status, and if you made more than one. So, for A.J. Terrell, based on his playing time, the fact that he has not made a Pro Bowl, which I think he deserved his sophomore year, but actually works to Atlanta's favor that he didn't, really helps us out here. Because if you are being paid as he is for that fifth-year option, it is paid from 3rd through 20th of the NFL's top corners, or top at that position. So the average of that. And that averages for him to $12,344,000. Now, the top corner, if anybody's made multiple Pro Bowls, they would be $18,140,000. So we're basically getting a $6 million saving by him not being a multi-time Pro Bowler. We're getting about what was it again? I think we're getting about a $4 million discount for him not making any Pro Bowls at all. I think it is a solid move to give him a one-year deal or a fifth-year option for $12 million. It's going to be really hard to get a solid corner for that kind of money, and he is that. Now, we're going to talk about a tale of two AJs here, though. We have the tale of his entering, which is absolutely god-awful. We have the tale of his sophomore season, and then we have the amalgamation of last season. But what I wanted to talk about real quick is a little bit of the timeline coming up. So the draft is going to be April 27th through the 29th in Kansas City. I will be doing a live stream of at least the first round through the Falcons pick. I may go longer, but I'm going to be doing a live stream at some point related to that. And then shortly after that, on May 1st, we have the deadline to extend a fifth-year option. As of this moment, I do not believe we have extended his fifth-year option. Per overthecap.com and looking at fifth years, they update this pretty frequently, and the only person that's had a fifth-year option extended so far on this list is Tua Tagovailoa of the Miami Dolphins. Are going to keep him for $23.1 million in his fifth year. Makes a lot of sense for them. But there's a lot of players on here that do not have that yet, but we certainly expect them to get a fifth-year option going forward. But we have till May 1st to make that decision. If we don't, then it turns into a very much like a Caleb McGarry situation where, hey, we're hoping that you do really well and you can negotiate for a longer deal after this year, but we also wouldn't mind it going the Lindstrom way where, hey, you did really well, you have shown your value to the organization, and now we're going to extend you on a pretty big contract. Now, what is that contract going to look like? I have a breakdown of the top 5 for both contract value in total and current top cap hits per teams with the top 5 cap hits that way per corners. So, let's start with top 5 cap hits. Darius Slay, after re-signing this year with the Philadelphia Eagles, next year is going to be a $26 million cap hit. It's not a particularly long deal, so he's not on the next list that I have. Then we have Marlon Humphrey at Baltimore. He's going to be a cap hit of $20 million. He is one of the top 5 biggest contracts. Adoree Jackson at the New York Giants, $19 million. Byron Jones, $18.3 million at Miami. And J.C. Jackson, $17 million in L.A., which they are regretting paying after he was injured last year and did not play in the 5 games that he was there like he did for the New England Patriots for the 4 years prior. And what I'm going to say is this. A.J. Terrell and J.C. Jackson are on a fairly similar trajectory in terms of how PFF grades them and production in general. So I look to him as kind of the benchmark of how we should be thinking about paying A.J. in the future. Because I certainly, out of the names I read so far, I think A.J. is not quite as good as all of them except for J.C. Jackson. Now, contract value, the entire thing. Denzel Ward, 5-year, $100.5 million contract, is the largest contract out there. Marshawn Lattimore, $97.6 million with New Orleans Saints. Marlon Humphrey, again, third biggest contract, second biggest cap hit, $97.5 million to Baltimore. Xavier Howard, $90 million Miami. And Jair Alexander, $84 million for Green Bay. A.J. Terrell is going to want to be paid like a top 5 corner. Even if his production does not match top 5 corner, he is going to want to be paid like that going into his 6th year in the NFL. He's going to want to get paid that as an extension if we do give him the 5th-year option for that $12.3 million. And he's going to be looking at those types of contracts to get that money. Now, guaranteed money for a lot of those is anywhere between about $40 and $60 million. So more or less they're all structured the same with about 3 years of guaranteed money, a lot of incentives, and then some sign-on bonus. I think the biggest one I saw that was guaranteed practical was $71 million. And I think that was actually to Denzel Ward because of a signing bonus for that contract. So what that means is that A.J. Terrell is likely going to be wanting a 5-year, $100 million contract. I personally think he is probably closer to worth of Jair Alexander of about an $80 to $85 million contract for 5 years with probably about $50 million guaranteed. That would be a sweet spot for the Falcons. I don't think he would be happy with it, so I think we're going to have to fork out more money if we want to keep him. Now, the 5th-year option is great because it allows us to see if he goes back to his sophomore status in his 4th year and really gives us a chance to look at him in his 5th year as well and still pay him relatively decent money overall. So we have a chance to look at him here and see if he really is going to be our future corner for at least a second contract. But if he is bad this year, or he reverts, or he just doesn't advance at all, then we can say, hey, after the 5th year, we're going to go the J.C. Jackson route and let you walk and see what you can do in free agency. Again, J.C. Jackson, great corner for the New England Patriots, and they chose not to pay him. And he didn't play well in Los Angeles, again, partly due to injury, but he was already on a trajectory to not do as well in Los Angeles as he was doing in New England. So let's talk about the stats for A.J. Terrell real quick. Again, I talked about his first year. It was terrible. He seemed like a bust. Started 14 games, had a 67% completion against percentage. He allowed 936 yards, 6 touchdowns. He had a missed tackle percentage of 14.9, so almost 15%. Missed 13 total tackles. Only had 1 interception. PFF gave him a 60.8 grade. Again, tale of two guys because the next year he came out and was on fire. I'm surprised he didn't make a Pro Bowl. But 16 games, 50% completion, only allowed 417 yards, 3 touchdowns allowed, 6.9% missed tackle rate with a total of 6 missed tackles. And then interceptions, he had 3. PFF gave him an 82.6, which was among the top corners in the league that year. Fast forward 1 more year, the first game out, he allows 2 touchdowns to Michael Thomas in New Orleans in the 4th quarter of that game to let them back in, or at least I think he allowed 1 in the 4th quarter. One of them might have been earlier. I don't remember. I just remember Michael Thomas being open a lot and him being the one who was covering him. But he started 14 games. One of those games he got hurt in, so it's hard to, you could say 13 and a half here. But he did allow 56% completion, which is, again, a little bit in between those two numbers, closer to his sophomore year. Only allowed 478 yards, but again, he played 2 less games, so I think you could probably say he was probably close to allowing 560 or 580 yards had he played an entire, all of 16 or 17 games. He allowed 6 touchdowns, and then he also had a missed tackle percentage closer to his first year, 13%, 7 total, though, so he had less tackles in general. Did not have an interception, but again, interceptions are not the end-all, be-all for determining if a corner is good. I don't care if they have a single interception if they allow less than 50% of the passes to be completed. If they're basically an island that you don't throw to, that kind of knocks out the number one receiver for another team. They don't have to have an interception. They just have to be really good and force the quarterback to go to his second and third progression, allowing more time for the defensive line to get to him. So, PFF graded him 63.9. Not great, not terrible, just kind of in the middle. So again, he had a bad year, a good year, a pedestrian year. I don't know which A.J. Terrell we're going to get. I assume it's going to be a better A.J. Terrell with Jesse Bates in the backfield, in the back, helping make him better, helping cover some of that over the middle that he may have been called on to do before, especially if we go single high safety and we have, basically A.J. Terrell, Jesse Bates, and it's looking strong like Casey Hayward is going to be back. I want to be very clear. Casey Hayward, I think, is a great athlete. A little long in the tooth for the NFL and a little injury prone. I think he only played 6 or 7 games last year, and we're paying him $7 million to be our top corner or to be our second best corner. We haven't made moves that have been particularly staggering at corner in the offseason so far to bolster any depth. The guys we have brought back are not particularly great and could not hold that position down if we needed them to, unless something drastic changes this year, which it may under Ryan Nielsen. I don't know how he's going to do, but he's done really well with the defensive line and the defensive scheming in New Orleans for a couple of years now. So I'm very excited about him. But the question is, do we do the fifth-year option on A.J. Terrell? Yes. Yes, we do. It's not even a question. $12.3 million, you're not going to find a better corner than him for $12.3 million on the free market. Absolutely, you extend that contract to him. Do we extend him beyond the fifth year? I think that wholly depends on how he performs this year. If he is back to sophomore season and we know that his worst days are probably behind him, he may have some kind of just okay years going forward, but his worst is behind him with that first year, which again, corners are notoriously bad in their first year with the exception of Sauce Gardner. They're not all Sauce Gardner. Most of them are Jeff Okudah, where they are either hurt or they're not picking up the game well until later on. And Jeff Okudah, I would argue, is not doing that at all at this point. I don't think the Lions are going to extend his fifth-year option from this same draft. A.J. Terrell has certainly outproduced him, and he's outproduced C.J. Henderson as well, who was taken before him. So, looking at it, I think the Falcons should extend him on the fifth-year option. It's a little bit more clear-cut than Caleb McGarry was last year. I don't think, though, that he is an automatic extension beyond that. Again, I will have a video coming out on Mac Hollins and any other moves that we make today on Tuesday, later on this week. But thank you guys for watching. I appreciate your time. Thank you for liking, sharing, subscribing. I'm really trying to hit 500 subscribers by the time we get to the end of this football season. Again, I have a live stream that I'm going to attempt to do. It'll be my first ever, so it may be god-awful, maybe terrible. I have no clue. I may have 1, I may have 0 people following me. Would love to have somebody in the draft room with me. When it gets to the Falcons pick, I anticipate it'll probably be basically nobody until we get to the Falcons pick, and then I may just pop up on people's feeds for some reason. But thank you for watching. Every view helps. As always, guys, I appreciate your time, and rise up.